Hey there everyone, it's Joe and welcome back to my channel. As with every set when it comes out for a Final Fantasy trading card game, with this one being Opus 4, I want to do a quick review on what I feel some of my favourite cards are in the set. And before you all sound off in the comments, these are my favourite cards in the set and the cards that I think I'm most likely to play that I feel are strong. They're not objectively the best cards in this set. So if you disagree with me, then let me know and sound off in the comments and tell me what your favourite cards in the set are. And normally I would highlight 4 different cards for every element in the set, so there would be a forward, a backup, and a summon, and an honourable mention at the end. But with 4 different archetypes now, where you have monsters added into the mix, I'm just going to highlight 3 cards for every colour, and then that way you guys can get a small impression of the kind of things I like, and then you can kind of make your own minds up as you go. But yeah, if you want to see what my favourite cards are for Opus 4, then stay tuned and chill with me with a cup of tea, and stay tuned and keep on watching. Okay, so we're going to get started with the fire cards that I like in this set, and the first one I'm going to highlight is Savan, which is Final Fantasy VI forward, and it's really nice to see Final Fantasy VI finally get like a massive amount of representation in this game, because it's a really, really big favourite for a lot of people, including myself. It's one of my favourites. But Savan is very, very strong. He's 8k for 4 CP, so he's on curve, and when he comes into play or attacks, you can choose a guy you control and it can't be destroyed this turn or broken. Now that on its own is pretty solid, but he also has kind of like a fire breathing effect where he can make himself stronger when he attacks, so therefore it's never fully safe to block him. Even, if he chooses himself as the card that can't be broken, it's pretty much never safe to block this guy, because you're probably always going to come out underneath. His S ability is cool. I'm not sure how often that will see play. If it were me, I'd probably only run 2 Savan and not 3, because while I think he's very, very good, and he can push the game forward, he's not a very strong defensive play because all of his stuff revolves around him attacking. That being said, as an attacker, he's an absolute monstrosity. And then, I've gone with a Bahamut here, which is the 4 CP Theatrhythm Bahamut, because I finally think that fire has a removal piece that I actually like. A lot of fire's removal I just don't like. I never liked Brunhilde, I never thought it killed enough things, I never liked Ifrit because it was too small. I don't particularly like the Ifrit in this set either because it takes too long to gain momentum, but if it ends up being a thing, then I'm happy to be wrong, as I always am. But this Bahamut deals 8,000 damage, which to me is like a sweet spot because it deals with a 4 CP unit or a 3 CP unit that's got on a power buff. And not only does it do that, but it also removes cards from the game. So that's a massive thing for a lot of cards. There's a lot of cards that have on-death effects, so you just eliminate them completely because you remove it from the game instead. And one of my favourite things about this set is the number of synergies that it opens up with older cards. So like this Bahamut is a 2 CP card if you have Fang. And, Fang was never really that great to begin with because the Bahamut that she interacted with was way too expensive. I mean, it's still a good card, but you would never play Fang just for that. But with 2 different Bahamuts, she might start seeing more play. And then I've also gone with Goblin because I think that Goblin, and there's a couple of other cards in this set that do a very similar sort of thing, being a 1 CP monster that you could sacrifice to give a guy haste and then draw a card. It just seems like one of those really nice little threatening plays that you can just play early and then you use it when you need it. Any Magic players who used to play the seals, like back in the day of like Nemesis and stuff like that, will know that this kind of effect is actually really strong, so I would definitely keep an eye on cards like this. One of my other favourite things in this set is the representation for Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Now, I never played Final Fantasy Tactics, the PS1 one, when I was a kid, but I did play Tactics Advance and I absolutely adored it. And I love the fact that it's here and it's in spades when it comes to ice. And one of my favourite forwards for this set in ice is Babus, who is very, very much my style of play. If anyone knows like the way that I play, like I love my Ultimecias, I love my control decks, Babus just kind of fits right in there. Whenever your opponent attacks, they have to pay an extra 1. And if they don't, then the unit is frozen and doesn't untap next turn or activate. And I think that, like, as someone who's played Magic, as someone who's played Yu-Gi-Oh, UFS, all of these things, control is always kind of, and taxing is always kind of the effects that I always come back to. So to see that Final Fantasy Tactics Advance has tax effects makes me so happy and warm inside. And then for backup, I'm kind of cheating here because I'm going with 3 cards, but I love Mute, Sid Randall, and Remedy all together. The main reason I like these 3 is not just because they all have the tax effects and stuff like that as forwards, but Mute in particular really stands out to me because it's a 3 CP backup that's a searcher, but is also an EX burst for 2 different units. Now, most 3 CPE experts only search up one guy, or they're 4 CPE experts that still only search up one guy, but they have an effect after it, like Rain, for example, for Lan. Now, I just think that, like, and going back to what I spoke to about Toby's decks in for the World Champion, he likes 1 CP backups, and I really like that kind of idea as well. So playing something like this and being able to recover 2 of the CP you lost by discarding for it, but deck thinning and searching for something you actually want, makes a lot of sense to me, and I think this card's actually very, very good. And then my monster slot for this one, I'm picking Flan, because I think Flan is a really interesting card. And I'm not sure how much play this is going to see, being honest, but I like the fact that it kind of swings momentum in your favour both ways. Like, searching up extra Flans is like a ramp effect, kind of, because you're trading 1 CP and dulling it to search for a card that you can discard, or and save for later if you need it to, or you can, and when you're done with that and you've kind of exhausted all the Flans out of your deck, you could then sacrifice it to make your opponent discard a card. So I just think, okay, well that's kind of cool, because you could just play the additional Flans when you get them. If another Flan comes out, then that's more search targets for it. I mean, there's only the one in this set, but who knows what gets released in the future. It just seems like a really cool card to kind of like swing momentum in your favour. So for Ice, those are the cards that I've picked. Now, Wind gets 2 of my favourite cards in this set, and honestly, I think that one of them, I'll be shocked if every Wind deck doesn't play it. The first card that I want to highlight, which isn't that card, but I really love it, is Onion Knight. And this is Legendary Onion Knight, and he is a 4CP 7k unit, which sounds a little underpowered. However, when he comes in or attacks, deal 3000 damage to something. And he also has the ability to kind of switch himself out for the Lightning Onion Knight as well, which deals damage to damaged forwards through his S ability, which is really cool. And he can also grab the Sage back from your discard pile back to your hand. Now, every Lightning deck under the sun runs Sage Onion Knight. So if you're going to run Lightning Wind, I don't see why you wouldn't run this card. It just goes perfectly with so many things. And, you know, if you think about it, when he attacks, he deals 3k to something. He's 7k, so he's a 4 CP that's technically kind of attacking for 10k, because if you deal 3k to something that's bigger than him and they block with it, he's still going to trade with it. So that's really, really worthwhile. And if they block it, you can always switch him out for something else, which he has his own kind of inbuilt dodging mechanic. And I honestly think this Onion Knight is amazing. I think he combos with a lot of older cards as well, like Barbariccia from Opus IV. You've got his own Onion Knight, like I said, Alcid. There's loads of little techie plays that you can make with Onion Knight that I think make him extremely powerful. However, the real star of the show here is No-No. No-No to me seems like the Minwoo of Wind. Like, if you're, you know, there's very little reason to not run this card. I mean, Wind has some amazing backups already, but No-No, whenever one of your forwards attacks, activate one of your backups. That opens so many combos, it's ridiculous. Now, one of the most obvious ones that I've seen on Facebook and things like that is Zemus, which is, again, another reason why I love the set. Zemus was a card that was considered pretty bad, but when you pair it up with No-No, that's literally all of your guys are unblockable. Because you can just make your guy unblockable, attack with him, reactivate Zemus, make your next guy unblockable, attack with the next guy, reactivate your Zemus, and so on and so forth. That 2-card combo is pretty terrifying. But that's not the only thing you can do with this card. Just being able to open up your resources, again, seems crazy. And the fact that this card is only, like, a rare or uncommon is mad. Like, this card is just so good. And I can't wait to be playing with this myself when it comes to Friday. And then the Summons and Monsters and Wind I weren't that keen on. Like, I did a spoiler for Alexander last week, but my favourite, you know, if I were to pick one of them, I'd pick the other Alexander that was spoiled earlier, and the only reason I wanted to pick that is because I think it's very meta-dependent depending on how many monsters actually see play. But I like this card because it destroys monsters, but it also has a use even if you haven't got one to destroy. And it kind of replaces itself to draw a card. So it can make a decent slot in your deck if you absolutely need to get rid of the Alexander for whatever reason. You can always use him to pay for other things as well. But I just, you know, the Summons in Wind have always been a bit of a weak point up and, you know, even now, and I just think that this doesn't really change an awful lot of that. Now, Earth gets some very fun toys in this set. We get to see, well, I mean, I'm not going to highlight it, but we get yet another Vincent, which means that I'm pretty sure that Vincent is the most printed character in Final Fantasy TCG, having 2 copies in set 1, 2 copies in set 2, a promo, and now this one, which makes 6 different Vincents, which is pretty mad. Anyway, my favourite cards in this set, Kefka is one of them, Legendary Kefka, and I'm so happy because Kefka is one of my favourite characters ever. I love Kefka, and he's actually decent. He's 8 CP, which sounds scary. However, you can sacrifice 3 forwards and or monsters in order to pay for him. And that in and of itself opens up a lot of combos as well. Like, you know, you could sacrifice cards that have on death effects, such as Viking or Cleone, which I'll get to later. There's lots of little things that you can do to kind of mitigate the costs for Kefka, and when he comes in, he destroys a forward, which is really, really powerful, actually. Like, you know, if you can kind of, you know, swing with 3 guys, they take damage, then you sacrifice them to pay for Kefka, and then you kind of have a massive swing in your favour. Like, I liken it, I wouldn't play more than 1 or 2 of it, I certainly wouldn't run 3, but I do think this card is very, very strong. And then going back to the combo potential again, we've got Magic Pot. Now, a lot of people that I've spoken to are really hyped about Magic Pot. I think it's a bit slow for my tastes, because it comes in dull, you have to wait a turn, and then it's useful. However, it only costs 1, so you can pay for it early, and it is a card that your opponent's probably going to want to deal with, say, Alexander, or anything else that destroys monsters, because it opens up a lot of combo potential, because you can switch a named card for a different copy of the same name. So whether it be another copy of that card or a different copy with the same name. So Lightning, for example, you could switch out the one that searches Odin for the new one. You could switch out Prish, the 2 CP Prish in this set, for a much bigger Prish, and then she gets her. Well, no, you wouldn't be able to do that. That doesn't work. Ignore that. But you can still switch it out for a much bigger copy, and if they've got an on-death effect and an enter-play effect, you could go Viking, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of really big potential for this card, and I'm really interested to see what other people do with it. So, you know, if you have any ideas that you want to share with it, then definitely sound off in the comments and let me know. And then for backups, I wanted to highlight Black Mage. I mean, there's always a Black Mage in every colour. This one is the Earth one. And the reason is because it's quite a specific ability. However, that specific ability counters probably the biggest mechanic in the game right now, which is dulling and freezing. If you look at Euros, Worlds, any big tournaments that we've had for Final Fantasy TCG this year, Ice and Lightning pop up a lot. Like, a lot. You know, Minwu doesn't counter the right things. Like, Minwu was there and was very, very strong, but countered fire and sort of wind's chip damage and some of Lightning's abilities. I mean, yeah, alright, countered Alcid, but that's why it kind of fell down over time. Whereas this one counters, you know, Genesis, Vayne, you know, there's a lot of things that it does that you can really, really hurt your opponent with this card if you expect a lot of Ice and Lightning. So if you're going to a tournament, bear this card in mind, because the chances are you are going to come up against some Ice and some Lightning at some point during that tournament. Speaking of Lightning, my favourite forward from the Lightning element in this set is in fact Lightning herself, and I adore this Lightning. Not just because it's the Knight of Etro Lightning that I absolutely love anyway, and you know, I would cosplay that outfit if I had the figure for it, because she looks beautiful. Anyway, she's a 5 CP 7k unit, which again is underpowered. However, she has haste, and that's always a threat in this game, because haste is much stronger in this game than it is in other games with a similar ability, because the only way to really deal damage to your opponent is with a forward. So being able to just go bang bang, you can win the game off that. But not only that, when Lightning enters the field or attacks, choose a forward your opponent controls. As long as you control another category 13 character, not forward, big distinction there, dull it. Now, that means that she can dull 2 guys in one go and still be hitting your opponent with it. Now, Opus IV Shiva sees a lot of play for doing that. There's no reason why this card shouldn't either. And because it says character, you could play cards like Mog 13 from set 1, which searches for her, so that you actually have the 13 backup already there. So you could just go search Lightning, play Lightning, slap you, your game. And then she can also, she has a bit of a weird wording. She has discard a card named Lightning, which isn't an S ability, but I think the reason for that is because there's different things that counter action abilities and S abilities. So like Savan can't counter this, but Emperor can. So there's the thing. Remove Lightning from the game, then put her back into the field dull. So once you've attacked with her, if you've got another Lightning in your hand, you can always bin it and then dull something else. Or you could do it during their turn. There's a lot of utility for this card, and I just generally really like it. And then for summon, I decided to go with Rhydon, who I think is very strong because Bahamut was, and this card is extremely similar to Bahamut. It's 9 CP for a summon, which is heavy, very heavy. But it removes one guy from the game and kills another. That's gonna win you games. Like, if Bahamut did, so will this. There's no reason why it wouldn't. It doesn't have kind of the damage limitation, so it will kill anything. And because Lightning clearly needed more removal, cough, Odin, cough, Rhydon just seems like it's a very strong card. It's legendary. It's a legendary summon. It was going to be strong, similar to Bahamut. So I would definitely keep an eye out for this, and if you don't plan on playing it, someone else is going to, so keep it in mind. And then I've gone with Yeoman for very much the same reason that I went with Goblin for fire. I think that all of these 1 CP monsters that grant an effect, sacrifice themselves and draw a card is very good. This one in particular gives First Strike, and First Strike can really change combat in your favour, so definitely keep this guy in mind as well. Now for water, there's a lot of good forwards in water actually in this set. Both of the legends are actually very, very good, but I have to kind of contain myself in my excitement when it comes to this card, and she's only a rare, bless her. And they finally brought my Beatrix in. Queen Bee is in the house, and she's good. She's actually good, and I'm so happy. She's 3 CP 7k, which is fine. She's an FF9 water forward, which instantly makes her good, because FF9 water just does well. If you control Steiner, she gets plus 1000 and can't be damaged by abilities, which is quite a lot when you consider that the card that she's asking for is also a potential searcher for her, and she also, when she attacks, all of your opponent's guys lose a K until end of turn. She's really good. I'm really happy with this card. She's like a wall breaker because she can make it so that your opponent's guys get smaller. If you have Garnet next to her, God knows the power boosts you can do. You can definitely build some FF9 built thing that will just do a lot of work. Definitely, you're obviously going to have water. Light Zidane is still probably the strongest light card in the game, so just having another aspect to the FF9 engine is great, and one that works so nicely with both the EX Burst Steiner from last set and the legendary Steiner from this set is just icing on the cake. She's just very cool. And then for backup, Mole Whip is really, really cool because she's 4 CP and she doesn't have an EX Burst, but she searches up literally any water forward. Anything. That's really quite strong. I don't think I've seen anything quite that open when it comes to searches before. They usually only search for a card from their game or something specific. So to just have something that searches any water forward is going to aid your consistency so much. But being a 4 CP unit, you're probably only going to want to run 1, maybe 2, because it is an expensive backup. That being said, she does still kind of search another card up, so she does reduce her cost down a bit through that, or she increases her value that way, I should correct myself. But yeah, I definitely think that this card is going to see some play. How many of it and how much of it is going to see play, I don't know. But I definitely wanted to highlight this card because I think that it's great to see something quite so open-ended when it comes to searches. And then for Monster, I really love this card, Cleone. If you've ever played Magic, and I know I come back to Magic quite a lot, but there are similarities, and sue me. But if you ever played Standstill in Magic, you're going to like this card. And again, control player, I love this card. Whenever a player plays a summon, you have to counter it and cancel it immediately by sacrificing this card. You draw a card for doing so. So that's really, really cool. You're never going to counter your own summon, but and one of the problems I have with this is that it's water, and one of water's strongest assets is its summon base. So you're going to have to kind of cater for that, but just don't be silly and play your own summons while you're a Cleone out. But being able to have that on your against your opponent is really, really solid. And if they cast anything, it gets cancelled and you draw a card. And if you're playing Water Earth, the aforementioned Kefka would go very, very well with this card. Because it's oh, okay, I don't need this anymore. Charles Darry's probably not going to do anything. Sacrifice it, put Kefka down, and I draw cards. I definitely think that this is a cool card that you want to keep an eye on as well. I really like water in this set in general. I think it got some really fun things. Mira, which is one of the other legend, I think could potentially have an entire deck archetype of her own. She's really cool, so look her up as well. I'll leave a quick picture up, but she's really, really cool as well. But water, I think, in my opinion, water and ice are the 2 elements in this set that are my favourites, but I think everything got a nice little buff, particularly wind. Oh god, do you know what? Actually, there's loads of them. I like this set a lot. It's a really cool set. Now we're quickly going to go over the 2 light and the 2 dark cards in this set. The first light card is Cloud, which we've already been over in one of my card of the weeks because it was the pre-release promo. And now that the set is coming out, I'm going to come out and say it. I don't really like this Cloud. The reason for that And I'll use lightning as my reference here is because of one word, and it's word forward. If you control a category 7 forward other than Cloud, he gets his ability. If that had said character, I would love him. His S ability has already been done by someone who can arguably benefit from it more in Machina, and Cloud, there's already so many good Clouds that it's going to be really tough to find a spot for him in decks, but I'm sure there'll be a dedicated FS7 deck like a Zac, Angeal, Cloud, that kind of thing, like a Crisis Core deck that will use him, but it's not a card that I'm going to use personally. Terror, on the other hand, I do quite like. Now, do I think that it's as good as Zidane? Probably not, but I do think that being able to search up any summon is pretty viable, like through her S ability, and she does kind of retain her value by being able to search up any summon of cost 5 or less when she comes in. Yeah, she's very, very good. Very good. But I with light cards and dark cards, I find that they're at such a premium, and when you have a card that's as such high value as Zidane is, or as controlling as Emperor is, they are hard cards to argue with. So I would like to see Terra C play. I think she'll probably see a lot of play in the beginning, like when everyone's trying to experiment with new things, and she is very strong, but I think over time she might peter out in favour of Zidane again. But whether I'm right or wrong, who knows? See what you think. Tell me what you think in the comments. You know how it is. And then going into the dark cards, Kefka, I think, goes in certain decks. Like I said, I mentioned Mira in the water section of the video, where I think she could have like a bit of a deck archetype with herself. He would go in that deck. An EX burst that searches up any monster is cool. An EX burst that searches up anything is nice. And having the ability to turn all of your monsters into forwards that can attack, I think you'd need to play something like Gipple, where you can boost them all, because 7k is not quite enough, in my opinion. But he himself he's pretty good. Like when he comes into play, he actually is above the curve when it comes to value, because he's a 5 CP 8k guy that searches for a card, so he's technically a 3 CP 8k guy. But so there is that. And then I do like Kefka. I like Kefka a lot in general because I love the character. But again, I'm not sure how much play he's going to see over cards like Zidane or Emperor. And then lastly, we have Shadow Lord, which to me looks like a massive middle finger to Golbez, which, let's face it, we kind of needed one of those a while ago. But Golbez isn't quite as popular as he was, like, maybe 6 months ago, so maybe too little too late on Shadow Lord. First things first I do want to mention, though, is that artwork is lovely, and I've never played FF11. This guy makes me think about it, but even though you shouldn't really now, you might as well just play 14. But I really like the artwork on this card, and any 4 CP 8k Brave unit is a good card in my books, because I'm a big fan of Opus 1, Light Cloud, Guy. I do quite like Cyan in the set for being an on-curve guy with Brave, but he's not quite as cool as some of the cards that I've highlighted, in my opinion. But Shadow Lord also has like a really cool ability where he comes in, blows up anything that's 2 CP or 2 CP, and whenever a forward your opponent controls is broken, he deals 2k to something else. Ironically, he'd be really good with Light Cloud, but you can't play them both at the same time because the one's light and one's dark, so you can't actually do that. So you might have to go with something like Machina or Palom. They could work well with him. So anything that kind of does blanket damage, and you know, as long as you kill one thing, you might end up with like a chain of like, I kill one thing, then this dies, 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 and that's really cool. But again, I think that's just going to be a deck brew thing that will remain to be seen. So with light and dark cards in this set, I think are really cool. I'm not sure they're as good as the ones that we've had before, basically. And that is it for my Opus 4 set review, and bear in mind again that this is only an early impression, the set's not even fully out yet, and I'm really interested to see what everybody else plays, and I love it when people prove me wrong. You know, I remember when Opus 2 came out, I said that Balthier was bad, and I was wrong. Opus 3 came out and I said that Shiva wasn't that great, and she's in every bloody ice deck. So trust me, I don't get it right every time, but I can hopefully give you guys a bit of an insight into the sorts of things that I think will do well in the tournaments coming up from this set onwards, and things that I personally would like to play. So again, if there's a card that I haven't mentioned, or you completely think that one of the cards I have mentioned is rubbish, then sound off in the comments and let me know, because I love hearing from you guys. So thank you very much for watching, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I always forget to say that nearly until right at the end. So yes, definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I would love you for it. And thank you again for watching. So I'll speak to you guys soon. Bye.